Some men walk into a room and announce who they are. Others walk in, say nothing, and the room bends around them anyway. The world has always been obsessed with crowns kings, presidents, CEOs, leaders stamped with titles to validate their authority. But the truth is brutal. Most crowns are cheap metal bought with politics, lies, or luck. Real power doesn't sit on a throne. Real power doesn't need a crown. Real power is the man who commands respect without demanding it. The man who doesn't ask to be followed but still leaves others walking in his shadow. That man is the Sigma. He rules not because the world gives him permission, but because he doesn't need it. The loudest man in the room wants to be king. The quietest one usually already is. Sigmas are proof that authority isn't granted by a crown. It radiates from character, presence, and the kind of discipline no committee can vote away. This is the paradox. He rules without ruling. He leads without leading. And somehow, he becomes untouchable in a world obsessed with recognition. 1. He doesn't need permission to exist. Most men live like squatters in their own skin, afraid to even breathe too loudly unless the world signs off on their existence. You can see it in how they walk into a room, heads slightly bowed, eyes darting around, movements cautious as if they need invisible signatures of approval before daring to take up space. They are tenants, renting their lives from the opinions of strangers. Every action is a request. Every word is an application for acceptance. And like tenants, they know they can be evicted at any moment if they break the unwritten rules of society's fragile approval. The Sigma doesn't play that game. He doesn't wait for permission slips. He doesn't knock on the door of the world asking, "May I come in?" He kicks the door open without a sound and simply exists with a weight that doesn't ask but declares, "I belong here because I decided so." That's the difference. His existence isn't negotiated, it's owned. He's not a tenant. He's the landlord of himself. And people feel that the moment he walks in. This is why his presence carries an edge. He isn't trying to impress, which is exactly why people are impressed. He isn't putting on a show, which is why his presence feels more real than any performance. The man who doesn't need permission becomes untouchable because no one can revoke what he never asked for in the first place. That's what makes him dangerous. That's what makes him magnetic. And that's why the world secretly envies him, even as it tries to label him arrogant, antisocial, or difficult. These are not insults, they are confessions. When society calls a man difficult, what it's really saying is, we cannot bend him. Most men will never understand this. They'll die waiting for applause before making their first move, still clinging to the idea that someone, somewhere, will crown them worthy. But the Sigma already crowned himself the day he stopped asking. That is the first brutal truth. The man who waits for permission rots. The man who refuses permission lives free. 2. He doesn't chase crowns, he builds kingdoms. Crowns are rented. Kingdoms are built. The masses scramble after crowns, titles, promotions, validation, names on business cards. They think wearing a crown will give them weight. But a crown is cheap metal, a borrowed symbol, and one day it is taken back. A kingdom, though? A kingdom outlives its builder. A kingdom becomes legacy. The Sigma knows this. That is why he doesn't beg for titles. He builds quietly. While others kneel in line, waiting for someone to anoint them boss or leader, the Sigma is out in the dirt, hands bloodied, constructing his empire brick by brick. He doesn't decorate himself with trinkets. He creates foundations that will stand long after the trinkets are rust. He understands that the man chasing crowns is essentially chasing validation from someone else's system. To wear a crown means you have agreed to play another man's game. But the Sigma is not in it for borrowed recognition. He is in it for creation. He is in it for sovereignty. He would rather rule a kingdom of one, his own world, his own code, than kneel for a borrowed throne. A crown can be taken. A kingdom once built carries his fingerprints forever. 3. His authority comes from presence, not position. The Sigma does not need a title. He does not need an introduction. His authority radiates from who he is, not from what is written on a nameplate or a business card. While others scream for attention, the Sigma can silence a room simply by existing in it. His power is not loud, it is undeniable. Some men are obeyed because their job description says so, but obedience and respect are not the same thing. A Sigma doesn't command by shouting orders. He commands without speaking. His silence is weight. His presence is enough. You cannot fake this. The world senses it instinctively. Some men pretend to be solid, but the cracks show in their need to over-explain, to demand, to posture. The Sigma never pretends, and that's why people bend unconsciously toward him. He doesn't act powerful, he simply is. 4. He doesn't kneel to social thrones. Society loves hierarchy. It builds little empires everywhere, cliques, offices, tribes, politics, and crowns, fragile kings inside them. Men bend the knee to these makeshift rulers, hoping for favor. The Sigma shrugs. He kneels to no one. He knows these thrones are temporary, built on fragile egos and fleeting influence. They crumble the moment their illusion is exposed. He refuses to play court jester in someone else's kingdom. He builds his own terrain and stands sovereign within it. This refusal to kneel makes him dangerous, because once a man refuses to kneel, he can never again be ruled. 5. He's feared. Because he can't be bought. Everyone has a price. At least that's what the world believes. And for most men, it's true. Offer them money, comfort, attention, and they bend. Offer them security, and they kneel. But the Sigma has no price. He cannot be bought. And that makes him untouchable. A man with no price terrifies those who rely on control. If they can't bribe him, they can't own him. If they can't own him, they can't predict him. And if they can't predict him, they fear him. That fear becomes respect, because deep down, every man envies the one who can walk away from any offer, who bows to nothing but his own code. 6. He doesn't rule people. He rules himself. Alphas are obsessed with domination, with bending others, with being seen as king. Betas are obsessed with following, begging to be ruled. The Sigma is obsessed with neither. His kingdom is not external, his battlefield is internal. He rules himself. He knows the only crown worth having is self-mastery. He does not seek to control the world because he knows that is impossible. He seeks to control himself, his impulses, his discipline, his hunger, his darkness. And the man who rules himself will always outlast the man who only rules others. Because empires fall, self-mastery does not. 7. He lives outside the game, so he owns it. The hierarchy game is endless. Status chasing, ladder climbing, approval hunting. Most men spend their lives in this arena. The Sigma walks outside of it. He doesn't even play, and that's why he wins. When you are not a player, you cannot lose. When you don't need their game, you cannot be trapped by its rules. Ironically, this is what makes him powerful. Because while the crowd fights for scraps inside the cage, the Sigma has already built something greater outside of it. The refusal to play makes him the true owner of the board. 8. He doesn't shout power, he radiates it. Weak men advertise. They scream. They posture. They pound their chests. They try to convince the world of power they do not have. The Sigma doesn't. He radiates power quietly, calmly, with the silence of a storm gathering in the distance. His confidence cuts deeper because it doesn't beg to be recognized. Noise fades. Presence does not. This is why people follow him without being asked. His gravity pulls them in, and they don't even realize it. He doesn't recruit, he doesn't beg, he doesn't market. He simply is, and that is enough. 9. He doesn't need a throne because he is one. A Sigma doesn't sit on a throne, he becomes the throne. His presence is the foundation others build upon, the invisible pillar that keeps everything standing. His authority isn't ceremonial, it's structural. Thrones rust. Symbols fade. But when the man himself becomes the structure, his rule cannot be undone. Even when he does not want to be looked to, people look anyway. Even when he does not ask to be followed, they follow anyway. Because some men are not leaders by title, but by gravity. 10. His crown is carved in legacy, not gold. Gold crowns shine for a season. They glitter on the heads of fragile kings, and then they tarnish, pass to the next desperate seeker. The Sigma does not chase such trinkets. His crown is carved in something greater. Legacy? He knows that men die, titles die, kingdoms crumble, but legacy endures. The echo of his presence, the imprint of his choices, the weight of his discipline, these outlast gold. This is the eternal crown. The invisible one. The only one worth wearing. The Sigma does not fight for the crown the world sees. He fights for the one no one can take, the one etched in the memory of all who crossed his shadow. On a final note, the Sigma never needed the world's crown because his soul was already sovereign. He doesn't wear his authority, he is his authority. The Crownless King is untouchable because nothing can strip him of what he never asked for. The king without a crown rules the longest. And that is the brutal truth. The Sigma doesn't rule because you call him king. He rules because you cannot stop yourself from treating him like one.